The tough part is, as big groups don't want it. I figured out a way to leverage it to go to the bank
because of your debt structure.
Right. I'm doing debt deals.
The bank loves it.
Yep.
It's the security for you.
And then as we clean up the building and put more equity into the building, then we can go back and refi after the 3 years. And then maybe Mrs. Seller, let's say we're 24, 36 months down the road. And let's say on paper, I owe them $1.8 million. I can go back now and say, hey, I can get you $700,000 today if you'll settle the debt with me and collateralize it with the building.
Let me ask you this question. Yeah. Would you rather buy a fair business at a great price or a great business at a fair price?
I would say the first for me. Yeah, because I'm in the lab repair business, right? You know what I mean? So, and I'm trying to scale, right? So a lot of the sins that us lab guys do are very similar, no matter what region we're in, right? So it's fixable. And you know what the biggest sin lab guys do that's most consistent that I see? They love their people. Now, that's not a bad thing, and a lab guy historically will usually cut off his nose to spite his face when it comes to his people,
Jay, dive into this. Employee-centric, or let's say technician-centric mindset. How does that hurt the lab?
Oh man, you're going to get me bombarded with emails and hate stuff. Okay.
Because you care about people, we all care about people. But if you're technician-centric, it creates some problems.
So what I see is it's so hard to find technicians, right? So when someone comes to me as a technician and says, hey, I want to set teeth for you, very, very hard to find someone that can set teeth and set them well. So, okay, cool. How much experience do you have? Oh, I had 18 years experience setting teeth. This is the next question I ask. Do you have 18 years experience setting teeth, or do you have the same year 18 times? Because most humans have the same year 18 times. They don't have 18 years of experience, right? And that's a huge difference. Okay, so lab guys, leadership guys, ownership guys, they find a group of techs, they shuffle, they get their team, right? And then it's so hard to get that team. And then you build that relationship, you spend so many hours. Because I preach to my guys and girls, unfortunately, the way our country's currently ran, however you want to put it, you're going to spend more waking moments with me than you are anybody else. So we don't have to freaking like each other, but we got to love and respect each other, right? Okay, well, that being said, we're going to spend so much time together, you start building these bonds, right? So when the work starts dipping off with, the ebbs and flows, and we can argue why and whatnot, they're afraid to let people go because they're afraid, well, what happens if it gets busy again? I need John, right? I'm going to, even though John should be doing 30 to 40 units a day for me, right now we only have 15. I'll just eat it. And it's tough because I sit on both sides of that coin because I don't want to fire people. I don't want to let go people, let people go or anything like that. But when I try to teach people, your business is a living thing. The lab itself is a living thing, right? So if you love your wife or you love your son, would you let something hurt your son? Would you let something hurt your wife? No. Why would you let something hurt your business? And profitability is your blood. So you're letting something suck the blood out of your business. So it's a balance, right? It's really hard for lab guys, because we live as lab people. We live in so much fear all the time. We're constantly like, oh my God, Dr. Smith's on the phone. They're going to leave me. Oh my God, Joni and models fighting over husband again. She'll probably need 3 more days off. It's like, it's hard for us to draw lines, the average lab guy. Yes, sir.
A question for you on growth.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about, growthing, what are the things that you obviously look for in a laboratory
Do they have a system? Yeah, process here.
Is there a certain prosthetic that attracts you? In other words, if it's single crown growth, or is it denture growth?
Or no, it's a process. Do they have a process for growth?
Okay.
Do they have a system for growth? Like, I am aggressive in how I grow my lab. I'm a customer-facing sales. I'm an anomaly in the lab space. The way I like to grow, right? Most successful labs I see growing or continue to grow are good at education. Do you have an education? Do you have a regular education thing? Or when I go to your website, does it say continue and ed and it's in the last one from 2007? You know what I mean? There's a lot, we understand that, right? Like, and it's not just doctor acquisition growth too, right? Are you growing your employees? Are you offering them continuing ed? Or are you just building those people that have the same year 18 times? You know what I mean? And there's a place for everybody, right? My dad taught me that, right? The world needs ditch diggers, Jay. You know, I call them mouth breathers. There's nothing wrong with that. People that just don't want to breathe through their nose, they don't want to think, they just want to do the same job with better. That works in a lab. But if they're all mouth breathers, if they're all ditch diggers, the lab's not going to grow. You know, they're just going to, wherever comes through the door, they're going to get it done, and it's going to go out in 3 to 5 days. You know?
Very useful.
The biggest groups, the private equity money groups, you know, my big brothers, big sisters, their first thing they're going to look at is this. So when the seller comes to them and says, hey, what's my value? Right? I want to sell. I'm thinking about selling. What will you pay me? Most of my counterparts don't have time to really run the business or know their business. They know how to make teeth, right? Which is fine. But they'll look at it and they'll say, okay, I do $3.2 million in rev. I should get $3.2 million. In private equity world, angel investor world, you know, VC, all that kind of stuff. No. All right. They're going to go right to what's your EBITDA. All right. And then, okay, so now a lot of the guys I'm having conversations with are a little bit smarter. And they're like, okay, well, what multiple do you pay? It's like, okay, cool, man. Well, we're in the dental lab space. To get people, like, the dream is to get 10 times, right? You're going to have to be doing 35 to 55 million in rev, you know, and you're going to have to be turning off 7 to 10 million a year to get that. There's a handful of labs that fit in that equation, right? So it's really hard for big money to figure this out. And if you see on my scale, I put profit last, right? Like, first thing I'm going to talk to a potential seller about, right, is what do you want? What is your motivation for selling it? Because most people are like, oh, well, I'm aging out, I'm 63. You know, I've had people contact me that are my age to sell me their lab because they're just burned out. They just don't want to be the guy no more or the girl, you know, okay? You know, they can't, they grew it to a certain spot. And what I've learned is most dental technicians, mom and pop dental technicians, or most dental labs, mom and pop dental labs, are the owner is usually the best technician in the lab. And he or she grows the organization to as big as he or she can handle it. And then very few have been blessed enough to delegate or find strong people to help them get bigger than that. You know what I mean? You know, because ultimately, if Dr. Smith has a problem with the production with the lab that day, who's Dr. Smith called? Usually the owner, right? You know, so it's tough. It's a tough situation. So what I want to know is, what do you want? And notice how money's here. I actually, you know, what is your legacy? Like, and I'll play with that. I'll be like, hey, Rob, you know, I'm very interested by your dental lab. I got your financials. Ty and I are going through that. If I came in here tomorrow, by the way, and fired everybody and sent it all to, you know, the Philippines, are you cool with that? Would you still sell me your lab if you knew I was doing that? Some guys, yeah, I don't care, man. Shoot your lab. There's very few. Most people would be like, no, man, I don't want to have any more conversations with you. You know, because they might have spent 20, 30, 40 years building this thing with these people, so they care for these people. You know what I mean? You know, I mean, well, we bought Kaler. I was down there a couple weeks ago, and we announced it to their employees, and this is the first time I'm meeting my staff. They're now my staff, right? And I did my whole horse and pony show, explained to them my theories, why the dentist and Tom picked me, and I opened the open forum. I said, hey, what questions we have? Very first question, person raised their hand. Know what she asked? Nope. Are you going to touch our salary? Are you going to change what we make? You know, because then you put yourself in the employee's world. They have a new boss now, right? Next question I got. When are you moving here? I was like, I'm not leaving Pennsylvania, honey. You know, you're going to see me every 4 to 6 weeks. No, you guys got to run this without me. You know, and that's a radical change for a dental lab to go from a mom and pop structure to a corporate structure where it's like, no, the manager and you are going to figure this out. We're going to empower you to run this. You know what I mean? You know, the owner's not sleeping here and making sure the casting machine casts in the middle of the night. You know what I mean? That's, you know, we can't do that. That's not how this business is ran, right? So that's why legacy is important. And then I usually ask them about time. And what I mean by that is, like, how much time do I have left with you? Do you want a job after this is done? What are you looking for? What do you want to spend your time doing, right? Some guys and girls will minimize it. Some want to be gone the next day. That all goes into the value, though. If you think about it, if you have a really strong, good lab, and it's circled a hub and spoke concept around one key employee, and then the next day that one key employee is no longer available, that's value gone. So that has to be put in the price. Then obviously the money thing, which we kind of talked about down here with sales and profit. But what I want to know is your lab growing, right? Because am I buying something that's on the incline, or am I buying something that's on the decline? Or like Rob likes to say, are we catching a falling knife, right? Because sometimes motivation for the seller is the wheels are coming off, and it's kind of like it's past them and they're burnt out. Like we saw a lot of guys after the pandemic in the Philadelphia area that had very good, successful $500,000 labs that just didn't want to get back on the horse. They won't have to put it all back together. So it's like, hey, I'll just go work for somebody else. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, if the lab isn't growing, we all agree a business is either increasing or decreasing. That has to go into the valuation. And I have to understand from the seller, what's the plan to get it growing again? Because every seller has a story they tell me about, well, you should have been here. You should have seen us in our heyday, or what this or that,
How well have you looked at how many are on the incline versus plateau or decline?
All of them are plateau or decline that I've seen. And the reason being, it is going this way. That's probably the time to sell, when most people are riding the wave. You're emotionally invested. Like that's where a lot of us at Rap Guys, we get tripped out. We get so emotionally invested in the identity of the lab. It's who we are. It's like, okay, man, I'm riding this wave. Look at this. We're conquering the world right now. Why would I ever sell this as a cash cow? Everything's great. And then you start taking some shots. You get thrown off the board once or twice. And I'm like, man, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to hang it up. You know what I mean? But it's like, yeah, but your value is that, right? So there's, and this is nothing new, but I guess the other part of the conversation I have with people when I'm talking to them about buying their lab, right, is, do you want cash or value? All right. And here's what I mean by that. So, Rob, we're buying your lab. All the people that do all the numbers come back to me and say, Rob's lab is worth $3 million. Okay. So that's the cost of the lab. Okay. All right. Rob, we're willing to pay you $3 million for your lab. Now, most people hear that and they're like, I'm getting a check for $3 million. Absolutely not. No one's going to give you full value, give you the full cash, right? Especially the bigger groups. They have all the money because they don't spend it. They keep it. They don't give it to you. You know what I mean, right? So then I would say to you, Rob, the valuation came back. We're comfortable with a $3 million valuation. The more cash you want, the less that number's going to be. What do you want? And then that becomes more of like, and I've advised people with this, like this might be a conversation you need to sit down with your board, your lawyer, your attorney, your wife, whoever, and say, how much money do we need? Right? Or we identified that we have some things we can fix and grow. Do you want more value? Do you want to go on the ride with me? You right? Do you want to hold back some money and hope that I fix or we fix a team or we revigorate whatever, and you actually might get 3.6, right? But you're taking risks now. You got to hit certain numbers or metrics. You know what I mean? Like that's another tough part of the equation that we need to talk about, because I've had people come in and like, I need cash, all cash, and I was like, okay, and we came in and they're like, hey, listen, the most I'm comfortable paying you $700,000 for this. I have 40 years. We're doing 2.8 million in rev. Doesn't matter. You're going to be gone tomorrow once I give you that check. And then I'm going to have to see if this actually can recoup, and I have to make my money back and invest, right? Because we all know dental labs ain't the most profitable things in the world, right? It's not like we're dealing with 40, 50, 60% profitability on our product, so it's a grind, it's definitely a grind to get that. So that's been a very tough thing for potential sellers to stomach, because, the average lab guy or girl works their tail off for a very long time. They miss a lot of football games, baseball games, a lot of birthdays, a lot of things, building an asset that they told their significant other, don't worry, someday when I sell this, we'll be rich, and it's like, that's hard, So, and then I see that a lot. I see guys or girls who've probably sold 3 to 7 years too late. You know what I mean? They held on maybe a little too long, and now I'm getting decent bones, but I basically got to build the whole thing back.
Right.
You know what I mean? So where this is really sexy or really attractive for me, and I don't get it too often, but if they have built systems that let them leave.
And that's people and technology.
Correct. We're looking at one right now. I can't even say where it is. But if I like to explain to people that if you're a business owner and if you got struck by lightning, or if I had to take you out of the business, God forbid, for something traumatic for 6 months, and you come back, if the lab is not growing, you're not a business owner. You're someone that has a really high-paying job. That's it. You should be able to remove yourself in an operation if you're the owner, and the thing should just keep going and growing. Right? If you have not set systems and processes in place for that, very rare in the dental lab space for it to be growing automatically. Like, there's only so many junior glide rails, right? But there has been some operators that I've come across that are like, no, I'm only here 2 days a week. Revenues, I'm good. My revenue is pretty consistent. You know what I mean? I put these people, process, which is difficult, right? Jumping around, but sales revenue is very important, but it's like one of the smallest things in the equation for us. It's more about the people and the process that they have. How are they driving sales? Like, there's some labs out there that, are doing 225 in sales, FTE, so that means they got 10 people. They're making $2.5 million a year. That's a very profitable lab, and that's something that's scalable and repeatable, because the bigger you get, the more you rely on people, the worse it gets, because people are like herding cats.
Right. Yeah, I heard it said that the size of the check doesn't matter as much as when do I get my check back. So if I paid $1 million or $3 million, both of those numbers don't bother me.
No.
It's just how fast do I get that money back?
Correct. Our goal is 36 months.
36.
Yeah, we're hitting home runs if we're
So you're just all profit go back.
and you're building equity, right, Sasha? Now we're thinking as me as the owner, right? And my
Pay it off in 36 months, you have an asset.
right, or pay it down significantly. Now I can go borrow again to buy my next one. So
That's okay.
this is a very interesting one that it's all over the place, but it's sticks and bricks. Okay. All right. So there's this guy, his name, love him, mentor of mine. His name's Chuck Yankner. Been retired for quite some time now. Chuck and his brother, Bob, they've done a lot of consulting in the lab space. They've done a lot of good stuff. Chuck used to, I think he was either the president or whatever, senior president of Dentsply. That was the big job, right? But Chuck was the guy for years that used to go, God forbid, if you were getting divorced in the lab space, he would go in and tell the judge what the lab was really worth, right? So he really taught me how to evaluate labs. And everybody from like the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s took the same finance. Chuck was the only one giving out financial advice to labs at LMT, right? His course. And he always advised his sellers, or his customers, to buy the billy, right? And pay it off as quickly as possible. So what we're finding, there's a lot of lab guys that own their building, which is great for me. Now, my big brothers and big sisters, they want private equity usually wants nothing to do with the real estate. They'll sign a lease, they'll do a lease with you. I love the real estate because here now I can give you a package with more upfront money because I'm also